Rick Lagina has just confirmed what treasure hunters have waited centuries to hear. Beneath Oak Island's bedrock, an ancient Templar vault has finally been found, buried deep below the original money pit. Inside, investigators discovered stone chambers, ornate metal relics, and inscriptions linking directly to the Knights Templar. For years, experts called it myth, a legend lost to time. But new ground-penetrating scans, sealed manuscripts, and eyewitness footage now prove the Laginas have uncovered something real and world-changing. Stay tuned, because this discovery doesn't just close the Oak Island mystery. It exposes a secret that's been buried for over 700 years. Hit that like button, subscribe, and let's explore the vault that finally ends the legend of Oak Island. The announcement came quietly, almost too quietly for what it meant. After months of sonar mapping and failed boreholes, Rick's team finally hit something that didn't fit. A void precisely 180 feet below the swamp zone, sealed and perfectly preserved. The chamber had no record in any prior excavation data. According to every geological model, it shouldn't even exist. But there it was, a hidden pocket cut into the bedrock right beneath a tunnel that connected directly to the original money pit alignment. For Rick, it wasn't just another dig site, it was the anomaly they'd been chasing for years, the one that didn't belong. Initial scans came back strange. Metallic density readings too heavy for natural formations, too organized for coincidence. It wasn't a single mass of debris. It was layered, intentional, designed, and it ran parallel to a secondary shaft that had never appeared on 18th century recovery maps. That was the first real sign that this wasn't the work of any early settler or prospector. Someone had engineered this centuries before. Rick's first words after the readings came through were caught on camera. This could be the original vault. When the team finally broke through the chamber's outer seal, the first thing they saw was stone. Hand-carved, water-worn, and marked. Sitting at the base of the entryway was a limestone slab no larger than a door, bearing a symbol none of them mistook for coincidence. A weathered cross pate, the same cross used by the Knights Templar. The carving wasn't recent. It had the erosion marks of centuries. Carbon dating later confirmed what Rick already suspected. The tablet was older than any colonial settlement, older even than the first European maps of the region. What truly stunned the researchers wasn't the cross itself, but how the stone was preserved. Marine clay had been used to seal it perfectly, a technique known to prevent saltwater corrosion. That level of foresight suggested whoever built this chamber understood both geology and engineering far beyond their era. Along one edge, almost invisible under calcified buildup, was a series of etchings, coded lines, symbols that archaeologists would later find matched those hidden in Scotland's Rosslyn Chapel, a structure often tied to Templar lore. When Marty Lagina saw the match, his reaction said everything. This isn't just theory anymore. It's the first physical link to the Templar migration right here on Oak Island. The connection was no longer abstract. It was literal, carved in stone and preserved under layers of mud for 6 centuries. But what came next would push the discovery even further beyond belief. As the chamber opened deeper into the bedrock, the radar team ran another sweep, and this time the signals came back in perfect uniform intervals. Metallic resonance repeating like an echo through the chamber. Whatever was buried down there wasn't random. The scans showed structured rows, shapes too consistent to be boulders or rubble. Rick ordered a micro-drill probe, a delicate operation meant to extract trace material without collapsing the chamber. When the drill came back up, The sample tray told the story. Quartz dust mixed with fine golden particles. Not native gold, but refined, hammered, melted, ancient. The kind of craftsmanship seen in relics, not currency. For the first time in years, Rick broke his usual caution and said the words that would ripple through every Oak Island forum in the world. We may not be chasing legend anymore. We're standing over it. That single line changed everything. If the gold buried beneath Oak Island had been refined long before Europeans ever set foot in Nova Scotia, then this wasn't just a treasure hunt anymore. It was a search for lost knowledge. The team needed answers, context that could explain who buried it and why. But those answers wouldn't come from the ground. They would come from history itself. Deep in the French naval archives at La Rochelle, a forgotten 1701 chart emerged as a maritime historian reviewed old colonial supply routes. Fragile and faded, the map carried a name that made Rick and Marty freeze the moment they saw it. L'Île d'Or Perdue, the Island of Lost Gold. Once adjusted for centuries of magnetic drift, the coordinates matched Oak Island's shape almost exactly. But what shocked them wasn't just the location. The map's margins, scrawled in a cryptic mix of Latin and Old French, mentioned Le Coffre du Temple, the coffers of the temple, sealed beneath layers of engineered trapstone meant to collapse if disturbed. When the brothers compared the sketch with their excavation layout, the match was uncanny. The chamber they just opened lay almost exactly where the map marked the central deposit. Marty called it an impossible coincidence, but Rick felt otherwise. Someone in France had drawn this centuries before Oak Island was ever recorded. That meant the secret of the vault had survived long after the fall of the Templars, perhaps carried by exiled sailors who fled across the Atlantic with pieces of the Order's hidden treasure. Research kept pointing back to one name, crossed out again and again in the ledgers of French ports, La Rochelle's Ghost, a ship said to have vanished during the purge of 1307. Some historians believed it had escaped under a false identity and disappeared into the western seas. The La Rochelle chart seemed to prove it, suggesting Oak Island wasn't random at all. It was the final destination of a planned voyage, a sanctuary for something the French crown was never meant to uncover. Deep in the chamber, the dig pressed on. As workers cleared layers of sediment and stone from the newly mapped tunnel, one of them caught a faint glimmer trapped in the limestone. What first appeared to be a bit of wire turned out to be a fragment of a small brass chain, fused into the rock like a fossil. Cleaned and magnified, the links revealed fine engravings, each one shaped into the Templar cross. This wasn't jewelry. It was ceremonial regalia, likely part of the ornate chains worn by high-ranking knights. Laboratory analysis confirmed it wasn't colonial or modern. Its alloy composition matched 13th-century French metallurgy, identical to chains found in Templar burial sites near Poitiers. Every detail, from the soldering technique to the purity of the metal, pointed straight to medieval Europe. The implications were staggering. The artifact predated any recorded European presence in the New World by more than a century and a half. That chain alone could rewrite the history of Oak Island. But what lay beneath it changed everything again. As the team gently cleared the soil around the find, they unearthed a small lead container, light enough to hold in two hands, yet so corroded it seemed ready to crumble. Its seams were sealed with wax and resin, each edge hand-tooled. Inside, astonishingly preserved by centuries of oxygen-starved mud, was a folded fragment of parchment still clinging to a layer of wax. When conservators slowly unrolled it under precise humidity control, faint black ink began to emerge. Flowing lines of medieval French script, whispering across time. The translation sent a shiver through the room. The text spoke of Lars Grand Tra, the Great Ark, and warned of Lucre Sula Rose, the secret beneath the rose. The words weren't random. Both were recognized Templar code phrases. The Great Ark referred to relics carried out of Jerusalem, while the rose symbolized the sacred veil of secrecy, guarding divine knowledge. Paleographers compared the handwriting to documented Templar clerical samples from the Archives Nationales de France. One match stood out: a scribe active in Paris until the very day the order was condemned in 1307. That link placed the parchment squarely in the time of the last Grand Master himself. But there was something even more remarkable: a hidden message. Using infrared imaging, linguists noticed faint shifts in the initial letters of each line. When combined, they formed an acrostic reading Domus Dei, Latin for House of God. To Templar scholars, that phrase meant more than devotion. It pointed to the inner sanctum of the order, the place where their most sacred relics were safeguarded before vanishing from Europe. Rick stared down at the translation table in silence before finally speaking. "Whoever buried this didn't want it discovered," he said quietly. "They wanted it remembered, but only by those who understood how to see it. The chain, the parchment, the map, they weren't random finds. Together, they formed a single trail, stretching from medieval France across the Atlantic and ending beneath the swamps of Nova Scotia. To the Laginas, the message was clear. The vault wasn't legend, it was deliberate. It had been built, protected, and hidden for reasons that reached far beyond mere gold. That realization changed everything. The evidence wasn't just historical, it was technical. Whoever designed these clues had mastered engineering, navigation, and concealment centuries ahead of their time. If the artifacts were meant to lead the team here, then the structure beneath them might have been built to keep everyone else out. Following that logic, the crew recalibrated their borehole coordinates and began testing the area just beyond the vault alignment. What they uncovered defied every earlier survey. The next chamber wasn't like the rest. It wasn't crude stonework or collapsed debris. It was engineered. As the drill pushed deeper through the sediment, the borehole camera revealed something astonishing: a wooden and brass lattice interwoven through the bedrock itself. This wasn't a natural formation. It was deliberate construction, a defense mechanism. The timbers were fitted with brass pulleys and water valves arranged in a cross pattern, forming a complex counterweight system similar to those used in ancient ship rigging. Every movement connected to another, creating a mechanical web. One wrong action, and the entire chamber would either flood or collapse. Whoever built it never meant to preserve the vault. They meant to protect it. The craftsmanship seemed impossible for the 1300s, yet every joint, every angle, every brass fitting reflected precision beyond its era. Maritime engineers later confirmed the design mirrored medieval naval pulley systems used to raise anchors or stabilize cargo on ships. That detail pointed to one haunting conclusion: the builders weren't traditional masons at all. They were Templar sailors, men who had fled Europe by sea and turned their shipwright skills toward crafting a hidden fortress beneath the earth. For Rick, the discovery changed everything. The Oak Island vault wasn't random. It was nautical in design, the work of sailors hiding something never meant to resurface. As they cautiously cleared away the debris, one phrase Rick muttered over the comms captured the unease perfectly. "This isn't a vault made to be found. It's one built to destroy itself if anyone tried," the words stuck. Before long, even the crew began calling it the Guardian Mechanism, a fitting name for the deadly intelligence they were now trying to outthink. Every turn of the bore tool felt like a wager with the past. Every vibration tracked in real time to prevent a fatal chain reaction. But the crew didn't yet realize that the mechanism was only half the puzzle. The other half lay above ground. Using advanced LiDAR imaging to map the island's surface, the team uncovered something extraordinary. Beneath layers of brush and uneven terrain, a hidden network of drilled stone markers appeared. They weren't random rocks or glacial remnants. Each one had been placed deliberately, forming a precise geometric alignment stretching from Smith's Cove to the Money Pit and across to the swamp. When plotted on a digital overlay, the pattern revealed a perfect symmetrical cross. It wasn't just symbolic, it was functional. Each intersection matched a known dig site or subsurface anomaly once dismissed as natural. When Marty linked the coordinates and rotated the model to a celestial orientation, the outline mirrored the constellation Orion with uncanny accuracy. The same pattern appeared in ancient Templar star charts, once used for navigation. It couldn't be coincidence. The Templars had encoded their vault's layout using the heavens themselves. A celestial map hidden in the island's geography, designed so only those who understood the stars could ever decode it. Rick stood in silence as the pattern stabilized on screen. The Money Pit, Smith's Cove, the newly discovered vault, all corresponded to the 3 brightest stars in Orion's belt. The revelation hit like a wave. Oak Island wasn't just a hiding place, it was an instrument, a celestial code turned into earth and stone. Every shaft, every chamber, every artifact was part of a grand design meant to protect a single core chamber. What they'd always believed to be treasure might only be the surface of something deeper, a design built with sacred precision. When excavation resumed along the newly charted cross alignment, the bore finally broke into another cavity. This one lined not with timber, but with smooth, polished limestone. At its center stood an arched gate, sealed tight and carved with a striking emblem, a single rose in full bloom, surrounded by vines and intersecting crosses. The carving wasn't decorative, it was identical to the Rosy Cross, the emblem later adopted by the Rosicrucians, a society many historians believe descended from the surviving Templars. The gate's placement erased any doubt. This was the entrance to the central vault, the heart of everything the island had been designed to guard. Even before they touched it, the scanners confirmed what waited beyond. Metal density readings surged higher than anything the team had ever recorded. Dense, structured, perfectly enclosed. Whatever lay sealed behind that rose-carved gate was metallic, and there was a massive quantity of it. The magnetometer struggled to keep a stable reading. The sheer volume of gold and alloy warped the signal itself. It was enough material to outweigh the entire Money Pit hoard many times over. For the first time, the data left no room for doubt. This wasn't legend or wishful thinking. It was real. The readings revealed a dense, solid cache. Coffers, chests, perhaps dozens of them, packed within a single sealed stone chamber. Rick made the call to stop all manual drilling. No one dared risk triggering another Guardian collapse. Conservation experts were brought in right away. Armed with micro-cameras and non-invasive imaging tools, they threaded a fiber optic lens through a borehole barely wider than a pencil into the cavity beyond the Rose Gate. The live feed flickered to life, showing a narrow corridor lined with smooth limestone and filled with centuries of silt. Then, as the lens adjusted, a faint glint cut through the darkness, a flash of reflected light from something below. The crew froze. The reflection wasn't random. It was gold, unmistakable in the LED beam, soft and ancient in its glow. The longer the camera lingered, the more flashes appeared, ripples of gold light glimmering from buried objects. It wasn't just one artifact. It was many, dozens, perhaps hundreds, a chamber of gold sealed beneath the rose, untouched for more than 600 years. Rick said nothing, but his face said everything: awe, disbelief, and a quiet understanding that this wasn't merely treasure. It was meaning, a message forged in stone, geometry, and faith. For centuries, Oak Island's story had been one of deception, false starts, and cleverly designed failure. But now, as the camera captured the luminous depths behind the Rose Gate, the truth came into focus. The island had never been guarding wealth for greed's sake. It had been protecting purpose, a secret meant to survive. As the image stabilized, the golden glare softened into shapes, shadows, and angles, deliberate arrangements rather than chaos. Then, at the center of the chamber, something distinct emerged. It wasn't a chest or a coin hoard. It was sculpted, an ornate chalice resting upright on a limestone pedestal. Even through the murky feed, its silhouette was unmistakable. A wide bowl, flared rim, and a stem wrapped in vine motifs. Days later, when the extraction team finally recovered it, silence filled the room. The chalice was heavier than expected, its surface glowing not with standard gold's sharp gleam, but with a softer, richer warmth. An alloy unlike any known today. Lab analysis confirmed the unbelievable. The chalice had been forged from Byzantine gold blended with Frankish silver, a metallurgical combination unseen since the 12th century. Every detail, every etched line spoke of two worlds, East and West, united not through war, but through faith, craft, and secrecy. Under magnification, an inscription traced the inner rim in elegant Latin: Veritas sub rosa. Truth under the rose. The phrase was pure Templar, their hidden vow of silence, used in confessions suppressed by the French crown after the order's fall. It marked secrets sworn under the rose, never to be spoken aloud. Rick felt the meaning settle heavily in the room. This wasn't just a relic. It was a declaration, an oath in gold, preserved through centuries of silence. This could be the artifact they died to protect, he said quietly, almost to himself. No one replied. Every camera in the room focused on that single chalice gleaming under the floodlights, its shadows stretching across centuries of myth. Word of the discovery spread fast. Within weeks, communications arrived from the Vatican's Department of Sacred Antiquities. They requested high-resolution imagery, metallurgical reports, and provenance data. The message wasn't casual. It was formal, deliberate, and classified. Rick's team complied, submitting the initial findings through proper archaeological channels. Days later, an archivist from the Vatican's historical office reached out directly. His statement stunned the crew. The chalice's dimensions and inscriptions matched a missing reliquary listed in the papal inventories of 1312. An object believed lost when the Templar archives were seized and burned. According to those records, the reliquary had contained relic fragments said to originate from the early Church of Jerusalem, possibly artifacts carried from the Holy Land during the Crusades. It was last recorded under the custody of the Templar Order's Grand Preceptor of France before the arrests began. No record of its confiscation, destruction, or transfer ever surfaced. For centuries, its trail simply ended. Now, after 600 years, it had reappeared beneath a Nova Scotian island. The Vatican's interest wasn't symbolic. They proposed a joint review under international heritage law. Legal teams from Canada, France, and the Holy See convened to determine ownership and preservation rights. The find had crossed from television mystery into diplomatic reality. Heritage law dictated that any artifact predating colonial settlement and connected to European history could fall under shared custody. But religious relics added another layer: spiritual jurisdiction. The chalice wasn't just a historic object. It might have been considered sacred property. Marty summed it up plainly. This just became bigger than Oak Island. Its global overnight, the dig site transformed from a treasure hunt to an archaeological fortress. Security intensified. Legal observers arrived. Media access was restricted. Every artifact, sample, and data file was sealed for chain of custody preservation. Yet, through the political noise, Rick's focus remained unshaken. He wasn't interested in ownership. He wanted meaning. Proof of purpose. That proof came quietly through analysis of the very first artifact they had dismissed months earlier: the limestone Templar tablet discovered at the chamber's entrance. A visiting epigrapher suggested reanalyzing it under full-spectrum infrared light. When they did, faint lines beneath the visible carvings emerged, revealing previously unseen text etched in a layered script. These weren't decorative markings. They were coordinates, but not for Nova Scotia. Cross-referenced against modern mapping, the coordinates pointed far into the North Atlantic, an isolated landmass roughly 1,200 kilometers away, uninhabited and largely uncharted. The notation accompanying the coordinates read in Latin, Hic est arca minor, arma ultraet. Translation: This is the lesser vault. The greater lies beyond. The implications hit instantly. Everything uncovered on Oak Island, the traps, the codes, the coffers, wasn't the end of the story. It was a waypoint, a map. Rick spread the parchment reproductions across the table, comparing the ancient symbols from the tablet with those etched along the chalice's rim. The rose motif appeared again and again, binding both artifacts together. It couldn't be coincidence. The rose was the cipher, the master key, sub rosa. Under the rose wasn't just a Templar phrase of secrecy. It was literal, a direction. The rose carved into Oak Island stone wasn't decoration. It was a gateway pointing to the truth that lay beyond. When they overlaid the LiDAR map of Oak Island's geometric cross with the newly uncovered coordinates, a pattern emerged that sent chills through the room. The same celestial alignment that traced Orion over Nova Scotia extended flawlessly toward another location across the ocean. The pattern wasn't broken. It was incomplete. Oak Island formed only one half of a grand celestial design, a mirrored constellation reaching toward its twin. Historians began re-examining the legend of the Templar fleet's escape. Some ships were documented, others simply vanished. What if the fleet hadn't been lost, but divided? Half remained behind to construct the lesser vault, while the rest sailed onward to build the greater one, ensuring that the Order's most sacred relics could never be seized by king or crown. The chalice wasn't the end. It was proof. Proof of continuity, of design, of purpose. A tangible link between two hidden sanctuaries, built in silence across an ocean and connected by the same language of stars, stone, and faith. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this discovery, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more incredible explorations and hidden history reveals.